so if you have a graph and you want to write the equation, and I want to have it, I'll say what form I want it in. This one I want in vertex form. So what is vertex form? Like f of x equals a
x squared h squared plus k.
And what else do you know about this? Like, what is the vertex when it's in this form?
H plus k.
Okay, h is the opposite. All right. So if I'm looking at this right here, what does this equate? This tell me right here. The h. What does the 4-2 tell me?
Yeah, 4 is h.
H. Okay, so I have that part, so I can write almost the whole thing, right? I can just do f of x equals, I'm not writing the a in yet, I'm going to leave that blank for a second. And I have x, this is opposite, then I'm going to put minus 4 squared. Don't forget to put your squared. Minus 2, so I have that part, I just need to figure out the a from the graph, right? If you can see exactly where it goes when you go over 1, down however many. This one went down 1. That's nice, because if you can see that right off the graph, then you know what the a is. What is the a? Yeah, -1. If it goes over 1, down 1, automatically -1. You can see right from the graph. All right, so here's our next one. So just think about it. I want you guys to see if you can try to write what this one is in vertex form. And you can look at the graph. Yours will have a grid on it. I just don't want to leave the grid on there because it's too much to write. And see if you can find that equation. So everyone try to write it down. Okay. Okay. Peter, what'd you get?
I got x equals 2x plus 2 squared plus 1.
Okay, is that what you guys got?
Yeah.
Because you had your h, your k, and then how did you figure out the a was 2?
Because it goes over 1 up 2, so over 1.
Okay, over 1 up 2, so both ways of over 1 up 2. So however much it goes over that first one is your a. Okay, so those aren't too bad, especially if you can see right off the graph what the a is. And I'll try to give you ones off the graph that are going to be integers. Sometimes you'll get some that are not integers. So I'm going to show you how to do some of those. All right, so here's one. You know the vertex. You know a point on the graph. And you have to write the equation. So there's a couple ways you can do it. This one, if it happens to be an integer, then it's going to be easy. You could just graph it and see if you can figure out what it is. But sometimes it's going to be a fraction. This one happens to be an integer, because when you graph it, let's graph it. So even though it didn't give us a graph, if we graph it, then we can kind of maybe see what it is, if it's easy. So always consider doing that. So this is -3/4, so it's exactly like the ones we just did, because this actually goes over 1 and up how many? You go from 4 to 8. 4. So you know that your a is going to be 4, this is your h, and that's your k. So if it's an easy one, that's not going to be too bad. I'm going to make a harder one. So what is my a that goes out front? 4. And then I have x minus my h. What is my h? -3, so +3, and then +4. So that's kind of just like the ones we just did, except for you had to draw it first. Okay, this one I'm not going to make so pretty. I'm going to say it goes through, the vertex is going to be -2, 5, and it goes through a point, -5, -5, 1. So if you look at this one, you can kind of see that it's not going to be just over 1, up 5, because this is clear. This is -2, and you got to go clear to -5, and it goes down 4. It's not going to be something you can just figure out by graphing it. So on this one, is what we're going to do is we're going to use our vertex form, and pretty much much we know everything but what on this? Because we know, do we know the H and the K on this?
Yes.
Okay, so we know the H, we know the K, we just don't know the A, right? We've got to figure out what A is. But this is telling us when I plug in this X value, I get out this Y value. You know the H, the K, you know an X value and Y value that go together. So if you plug in all of those things, you should be able to find what the A is. So I know this Y value goes with this X value. So I'm going to plug in 1. And then I have my X value of -5. I know my H, so it's a -2. We're going to make sure I put a +2. And plus K, which is 5. That's how I'm going to find out my A value, is by plugging in. So this is kind of confusing to plug in this for X and Y. Just remember at the end, when you get done, you're still going to put X in for X, 2 in for the H, and 5 in for the K. We just need to figure out what this A is. And these are 2 points that go, 2 X and Y values that go together. So, as you're looking at this, be careful that when you square it, you always get a positive number. So this is going to be 1 equals, what is -3 squared? 9. So I have A, that is 9 plus 5. As you write this down, I probably wouldn't write it down like that, because do you ever write it down A times 9? How do you write down your things? 9A. So maybe just instead of writing it down that way, you'll be less confused if you just write 9A, because now it's an easy equation to solve. Subtract 5, so you get -4 equals 9A. Divide by 9, so you get -4/9. So now you just have to remember to take that value and put it in right here, -4/9. Alright, so I want you guys to try one off your homework. Alright, so notice this part you should always be able to get pretty easy, the H and the K. If it's +/6, you need to make sure you put +6 down here. And then 8 + 8. So we just had to figure out this number right here. So remember, this is the H and the K. This is an X and a Y. So 12, we don't know the A. X minus H squared plus K. Alright, so that's just plugging directly into your vertex form. So look and see if that's what you wrote when you plug it in. So this should be 4 squared, 16. So make sure when you write it, if you just write it that way, if you write it the other way, you're going to maybe get confused on what you need to do. So when I subtract A, I get 4 equals 16A. Divide by 16 and you get 1/4. So you plug it in right here. Now one way that you can check this is to plug it in the calculator and see if it works. So if I just go to my calculator and I just go to Y equals and I plug it in, I just put in 0.25 instead of 1/4. There's 1/4 X plus 6 squared plus 8. So I could look at the graph, I could see if it looks like it goes through those points. Can't really tell exactly. But if I look at my table, you should be able to look at the table and notice it has -6/8. It goes through, and it goes through -2/12. And let's see if -6/8 looks like it's a vertex. Oh, what did we do that? Yeah. Notice how, whoops, I did the wrong one. But right here, you can tell the vertex because here, these are the same around the vertex. And if I went up, then -4 and -8 would be the same too. So you can always kind of check to see if you have it right. So if the problem says this, find it and it doesn't give you a graph, it just says find it, you know the x-intercepts are 3 and -1, it has a maximum of 9. So if you know that the x-intercepts are 3 and -1, how are you going to find the vertex and the A? Because we need the vertex and the A. Okay, Vika, what is it? Alright, so if you find the middle of these, and you can find it either by looking at the graph, or just remember the middle is just the average of them. So this is going to be 2 divided by 2. This is, the number 1 is right in the middle. So if I look at that, this right here is going to be the middle of my parabola. Right, because these points have to be on either side.
It has to be at 9.
Well, yeah, but it has to be a maximum at 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you know that's your vertex. It has to be at 1, because it's right in the middle of these two. And the y value has to be 9. So you know 1, 9. And now you have to figure out the A. So this one A, is this A going to work out nice? Because I'm going to go over 2 and down 9. It's not really something we know. Usually it's over 2, down 4, or a multiple of 4. If it was like that, then it would be an integer, but it's not going to work that way. So this one, I don't know exactly where it's going through. I'm just going to kind of guess. It goes somewhere right here. But I know this is my H. I know this is my K. And do I have an X and Y that I know?
Yeah.
0, 8.
Yeah, either one, like -1, 0, or 3, 0. So you're going to do the same thing. Okay, voice, camera, please. And you're going to plug in your H and your K and your X and your Y. So I'm going to have, plug in my Y. I don't know A. What do I put next? -H. Oh yeah, thanks. I'm going to put something in for X, 3, and then minus what? -1 plus 9. So I had 0 equals, what is 3 minus 1 squared? 4. So make sure that you're doing, don't do 3 squared minus 1 squared. Make sure you do in parentheses first. 3 minus 1 is 2. Squared is 4. So now, to solve that, -9 equals 4a. Divide by 4. So, whoops. A equals -9/4. So now, after all that, you've got to remember you've got to write your answer. So in vertex form, I have y equals a, -9/4, x minus my h, x minus 1.
The answer, we don't like the x and the y.
Right, so for the answer, remember your answer is the general equation for the whole parabola. So you, after you figure out, you just use this to figure out the a, and then yeah, down here, you got to remember that you actually write x and y in your equation. Yeah. All right, so intercept form. This is intercept form. It kind of looks weird, but once I show you, it will make more sense. On this one, it's called intercept form, but really is what it is your, when you look at it, you can see your x-intercept is what you can see. So when it's in intercept form, your x-intercepts are going to be p, comma 0, because that's 0 has to be on the x-intercept, and q. Okay, and so I'll show you one and what it looks like. So if I have f of x equals, let's even have an a out for it. I do an even number, it will make it easier for us for at first. Okay, so if this is my equation and you have to graph it, of course you can plug it in your calculator, look at it. I kind of want you to do that as a check. When you go to graph it, let's look at what it's going to look like. Values. I have something that I know. And this is why it's intercept form, because what happens If this is a plus 2, what is the intercept going to be according to our equation up here?
0.
I need to plug in what right here? It's going to be P and Q, so if this says the opposite right here, these are always the opposites. So if this one says plus 2, what should the intercept be? Minus 2. So minus 2 is going to be one intercept.
Wait,
So let me show you why when it is going to be. So right here, if you look at the equation, this says minus P, so it's always the opposite is going to be the x-intercept. So if this says plus 2, negative 2 is going to be my intercept. And watch why. It should be like this, right? Negative 2, 0. Let's see what happens when I plug in negative 2. If I have 3, I plug in negative 2. Oops, plug in negative 2. This is going to be 3. What is negative 2 plus 2? 0. And that's why this is the x-intercept. Because 0 times anything is just going to be 0. So if I can plug in something that makes one of these two 0, negative 2 makes this one 0, what makes this one equal to 0? 4, which is the opposite of this, right? This is negative 4. So when I plug in positive 4, this will be 3, 4 plus 2, 4 minus 4. So this is 3 times 6 times 0. So at 4, you also get 0. So that's why they're intercepts, is because when you plug in the opposite of what this is, it gives you 0. And then A's out front. So the thing is, once you figure that out, you just have to graph those intercepts. So here's negative 2, 0, and 4, 0. And then you have to figure out, maybe, can I figure out the y-intercept? That would be a good one to have. Because you kind of want to make sure you cross at the right spot. Where is the y-intercept going to be? When I plug in 0, right? So let's kind of plug in 0 somewhere. Oops. And it's negative 24. All right, because I have 3. If I plug in 0, I get 0 plus 2, and 0 minus 4 is negative 4, so negative 24. If it's at 0, negative 24, so we're going to make this one, this is counting by ones.
Wait, you just added to it, like, how do you get from negative 24?
By timesing these out. So I plug in 0, I'm plugging 0, 3 times 2 times negative 4. So 6 times negative 4, negative 24. If at 0 it's at negative 24, we better count by, what do you guys want to count by on this one? Fours?
Which questions on the homework do you notice for?
This is like 9 through 12 on the bottom of 2.5.
Wait, where's the 2.5 to?
Just 9 through 12. And we're going to probably skip 11 and 13.
So this is
So we have to do 2.4 and then 9 through 12 and 2.5.
Okay, hold on, and I'll tell you, because I'm going to take something off of 2.4. So, what do I got? 20, 24. So here's this one right here. It's right there. Do I know where the vertex is going to be? Can I see where the middle of this is? What's right in the middle of 4 and negative 2? Okay, 2 divided by 2, 1. So I know this is my vertex right here. So if this point is at 0, 24, where is another point? Because it has to be symmetric. 2, negative 24. Okay, right there. And then my vertex should be where? So I'm going to write down.
So your slope at 3, it will have to be 1 negative 27.
So it's going to be at 1, and then you plugged in 1 already and got the answer.
I plugged in your slope. Your 8.
Oh, yeah, so you did it without even knowing. Okay, yeah, because it has to go from wherever it's at, it has to go over 1 up 3, because of the A's 3. So yeah, it should be negative 27 when I plug it in. Let's just double check. 1 plus 2 1 minus 4. So you get 3 times 3 times negative 3. Negative 27.
Sorry, were you getting the ones though?
Because I know that the vertex is at 1,
Yeah.
right? So you just have to plug in 1 into here to see what you have. So you get negative 27. And did you guys see how Todd knew that before he even had to plug it in? Because this is going to be what, negative 28. So this is just right above that one. He knew that if you went over 1, you'd have to go up 3 because the A was 3. So since this was on either side of it, it should go over 1, up 3, over 1, up 3. So he knew that without plugging it in. So there's your graph right there. Now, of course, I can check this by going to my calculator